Chapter 3. You want to play? Help. I need somebody. Remus POV. So this is the menu I've drafted for you two to finesse however you like, and we can make any tweaks or changes to the dishes you'd like today. James spoke confidently, handing 2 identical sheets of paper over the counter to Lily and Remus, adding final flourishes to the plates of tiny dishes he'd been working on. Lily hummed, taking in the options with a sidelong glance at Remus, clearly waiting for him to find some sort of punchline in the menu she and James had been working on all week. Eyes skating across the page, it was all he had expected until he got to the finger sandwich options. Breaded cod goujons? He barked out a laugh, knocking a shoulder into Lily. You've put fish finger sandwiches on our extra fancy canapé menu? James had lit up at his laugh, his eyes flickering back and forth between he and Lily. Well, Lily here said it was your favorite, and I thought if there was one way to get you on team food, then it would be to have fish finger sandwiches available from 6 till 11, 5 nights a week. Humming, Remus narrowed his eyes at his business partner. You're playing dirty. Lily laughed, shaking her head and cursing at him fondly. Fuck off, Ree. You know this is going to be good for us. Come on, then. He held a hand out to James, gesturing for him to hand over a plate. Give me my blackmail sandwich with ketchup. Ketchup? Heathen. James scowled, handing over a red bottle with a very cheffy sigh, crossing his arms as he waited for the verdict. He didn't have to wait long, however, as Remus let out a loud moan as he bit into the sandwich, clutching it close to his chest. That's fucking insane, Remus spoke, licking his lips before going in for a second mouthful. Have you tried this? He asked Lily incredulously. No, Ree. That is what a tasting session is for, you dimwit. Hey. Okay, James interrupted their bickering awkwardly. So I'm going to give you everything one at a time, and if you just let me know honestly, and then I have some more ready to go as the staff get in, so I have a wide range of options. Good? Gimme, come on. Remus came close to whining. He'd had to smell James's cooking for the last 90 minutes, and it was safe to say he was hungry. So, did you like it at all, Lily? Remus was officially not in this conversation then. Not that he minded. James was clearly trying his hardest to flirt professionally, and Remus had spent the last 3 dishes trying not to laugh at James's unsubtle advances. Apart from that mushroom puree crouton crap, yes, she answered harshly, completely decimating James's bright smile. Honestly, I don't know what possesses you to ever serve that to someone, let alone your superiors. James spluttered, and Remus span on his heel, pretending to check his phone. I guess I could try it again, or we could just get rid of it, maybe add another refresher option? No. Remus was used to this, Lily's Dom persona peeking through when she was doing business, but he had a feeling that this slip was intentional, testing James to see how he reacted to her. They'd received the love contracts back from their lawyer yesterday, drawn up to protect their business from their slutty tendencies, and now Lily was pressing James's boundaries to see exactly how much he could stand. Would you not like something else? No! She cut him off again. What I want is for you to get rid of any trace of that idea from the face of the earth. Understood? Yes, ma'am, he answered. And just as Remus slipped his phone back into his pocket and turned to the pair, James mumbled under his breath, Stop being mean to me, or I swear to God I will fall in love with you, Evans. Choking on a laugh, Remus surveyed the scene. Lily stood from her stool, arms braced on the counter, lips pillar box red, and breast pushed forward in whatever magically constricting dress she'd slipped into that morning. James, shoulders tense and head down, moving empty plates to the sink with a telltale flush on the back of his neck, doing his best to keep his crotch pressed into the cabinets. Happy, Lily? He asked, keen to get as far away from her predatory eyes as quickly as possible. Yes. She flashed a grin at him, eyes only briefly leaving the chef's muscular frame. Will you take the menu and work your magic? Taking the piece of paper she preferred to him, now covered in their scribbles with tweaks and notes on presentation, He bowed out of the kitchen with a quick wink. "Since you asked so nicely." Atelier eats. Short rib arancini. Tomato ragu with braised short rib of beef encased in creamy risotto, breaded and deep fried, served with Parmesan shavings. Pumpkin and sage arancini. Roasted pumpkin and sage encased in a creamy vegetarian risotto, breaded and deep fried, served with crispy sage and vegetarian Parmesan shavings. Chicken tikka skewers. Chicken breast pieces marinated in Indian spices and natural yogurt, grilled and served with mango chutney, lime pickle, and raita. Soy tikka skewers. Soy bites marinated in Indian spices and soy-based yogurt, grilled and served with mango chutney, lime pickle, and vegan raita. Caprese skewers. Buffalo bocconcini skewered with cherry tomatoes and fresh basil, served with a balsamic glaze. Pumpkin panna cotta. Creamy pumpkin custard served on a vegetarian Parmesan crisp with pumpkin seeds. Finger sandwiches. Choose from falafel and hummus, cucumber and cream cheese, cheddar and caramelized onion chutney, bacon, lettuce, and tomato, vegan bacon, lettuce, avocado, and tomato, breaded cod goujons with tartar sauce, coronation chicken. He didn't see either Lily or James for the rest of the day, and he pondered that as he stretched out the stiffness in his muscles from sitting in front of the computer for hours. He'd only dipped out of the office a couple times, just to check that the staff were happy and to deal with a problem one of their regular customers created. Now it was nearly closing time, and more than anything, Remus wanted his bath and his bed. Switching the monitor off, he headed down the stairs and out into the club, taking in the last couple of stragglers and nodding at the staff who acknowledged him. Thursday nights were always fairly quiet, so they tended to close around 11:30. The only pain was that someone, either he or Lily, needed to stick around and wait for the takings so they could be secured in the office safe. Normally, they would trust the closing bartender with the job, but as it was serious and he had only worked 3 shifts so far, they were doing the job themselves. Knocking gently on the top of the bar, Sirius's head popped up from behind the surface. "Remus!" "Sirius?" Remus acknowledged, trying to ignore how adorable the boy looked, his long hair tied up in some sort of artful bun braid thing, a wide smile on his face and eyes sparkling in the low light. "Do you have something for me?" Sirius blinked slowly, dazed for a second. I can do you an old-fashioned before we clean down? I'm sorry, nothing's come through saying that you want..." "Sirius, I meant the takings, love," Remus interrupted him, stopping his minor panic mid-thought. "We normally switch to card payments only for the last 30 minutes of service. Did no one tell you that?" "This is my first close alone. I guess Doc must have forgotten that bit. Sorry." Remus tried to ignore the strange twinge in his chest that came from Sirius giving one of their other members of staff a nickname, barreling straight through it. "That's no problem. Normally, you cash up 30 minutes-ish before we're due to close, seal it in a cash bag. There should be one tucked behind the system, and then we'll eventually get you a pin for the office if you end up closing a lot. If not, either Lily or myself will come and fetch it to put it away in the safe. Has everything else gone okay tonight?" "Yeah, apart from that guy you and Pete had to kick out, it's been pretty chilled." "Good, that's good." Remus skirted behind the bar to press go through the process of closing down the cash till. "Did Crane show you how to cash up, or did he forget that too?" Remus asked carefully, trying to inject some humor into his tone, a little annoyed that one of their best workers forgot something so vital. "I used to cash up at my old work, so I can do that. He didn't show me the particulars, though." Sirius spoke softly, standing just to the right of Remus so he could see the buttons he was pressing on the screen. "Would you show me?" Remus merely hummed, reaching out to hook a hand around the smaller boy's hip and pull him closer to the screen, so that he was directly in front of it with Remus able to see the screen, even with Sirius between him and the system. Shifting ever so slightly closer so that he could reach around Sirius to indicate the correct things to type and press, he inhaled as the other boy's body leaned into his. Momentarily distracted by the smell of his hair, like eucalyptus and spearmint, Remus took another lungful of air in, only opening his eyes again when he felt rather than heard Sirius hum in question. Talking him gently through the process of shutting down the till down, he didn't notice until glasses were pushed across the surface to their right that he'd been rubbing slow circles into Sirius's hip over the fabric of his t-shirt. Clearing his throat softly, he dropped his hand and stepped backwards, reaching for a tag for the cash bag. So, once you're happy, you need to seal the bag and tag it with one of these. He held up the small white plastic tag. And then, if you want to follow me, I'll show you how we cataloged the safe entries. Sounds good? Yes, yeah, Sirius murmured, pink high on his cheeks, and both hands clenched tightly around the takings. Not that different to my last place, really. If you want to take the lead? Do you need a lift home? Remus asked as he locked the lobby doors behind he and Sirius, the last of the staff to be heading out, nodding to the security guard for the evening. That would be great, actually. James messaged me earlier to say he was going to be out all night. So he's the one that drives then? Remus asked as he used his palm on Sirius's lower back to direct him around the side of the building to where he and Lily parked, raising an amused eyebrow when he saw Lily's car and another he didn't recognize parked either side of his. Yeah, Sirius paused, looking confused for a second. That's his car there. Ah, Remus let out a low chuckle as he gestured for the boy to get into the passenger side of his Jeep. Well, the blue one is Lily's, so I can give you 3 guesses as to where James is. Oh! Sirius turned his face away from Remus to stare at James's Fiesta, chewing his lip in thought. You really think they're... Grinning widely, Remus turned his head to meet Sirius's questioning look. Does that surprise you? I guess not. I just didn't think you guys would... He broke off, hands twisting around the strap of his rucksack nervously. Play with the staff? Remus asked, a sharp smile taking over from the previous grin of amusement, raising one eyebrow as he navigated the empty streets. If that's the way you want to put it, sure. Sirius let out a small laugh. I'm just out near Fallowfield, if that's okay. Sure. Remus turned his indicator on, slipping into the next lane over to allow for the new directions. You know, you're welcome to play in the club too on your nights off. There's a discount on drinks and soon-to-be food for staff. With you? Sirius blurted, and Remus felt his eyes on the side of his face, turning to easily meet the boy's incredulous stare. With anyone you'd like to play with. You watched my demonstration on Saturday, right? He asked gently, giving Sirius the chance to deny it if he wanted. Yes, the boy whispered, looking down at his hands now. Did you enjoy it? He gently encouraged Sirius. I think so. Well, I remember you said at your interview you'd never been into a kink club before. If you'd like to explore that side of yourself, Atelier is a safe place. You've seen firsthand how we treat customers, and we would never use any knowledge of your personal life against you at work. Remus probed him gently, choosing to not look at Sirius, keeping the conversation light and careful. Don't feel as though you have to. You have nothing to prove to anyone, and just because you work in the BDSM world does not mean you need to play there too. I just wanted to let you know that you were free to explore, and Lily or I can introduce you to some excellent playmates if you'd like. So, not you? Sirius asked, a slight tremor in his voice. I haven't ever... not with anyone. That's okay, love. You don't need to explain yourself to me. He could have guessed that Sirius was a virgin based on his reactions in and around the club, but the confirmation of such was a little dizzying. How had the boy managed to remain untouched for so long? You don't think it's weird? No. But you wouldn't want to play with me? Sirius asked, whispering into the silence, staring into the darkness that was occasionally interrupted by the bright light of the city. Wouldn't isn't the right word, Sirius. But Lily can play with James? I get the feeling that James is a little more into the scene, no? Remus asked, finally sparing Sirius a sideways glance as he took the final turn onto the boys' street. I tell you what, you have Saturday off, yes? Mm-hmm, the boy hummed, a tiny frown line dissecting his brow. Use it to do a little bit of research into BDSM. Make a little list of what you might like, anything that catches your fancy, and look into dynamics, the different sort of dominant and submissive roles people have. None of that 50 Shades of Grey shit, but there are some good Reddit threads about realistic BDSM practice, some Tumblr blogs, and kink websites. He paused as he pulled up where Sirius directed him. Bring that to me on Saturday, and we'll see if we're compatible. If we are, and you still want to play, then we can talk about it more, okay? And if we're not, Sirius asked, then I'll introduce you to someone that can give you the things you want safely. Does that sound good? Yes. Good. Remus swallowed, reaching for a slip of paper in the center console and scribbling his number on it, and then pressing the button to unlock the car from the inside. If you have any questions about anything you find, feel free to text me. Don't expect a response before 9 a.m. He joked. You did good work tonight, Sirius. We're glad to have you on our team. This doesn't affect that. His words seemed to brighten the smaller boy up, who merely smiled at Remus and then hopped down from the Wrangler onto the pavement, rushing over to a worn door and slipping through it quickly. You wouldn't want to play with me? Remus imitated Sirius's slightly higher voice as he drove off, dropping one hand to rub it at his half-hard cock through his trousers. Jesus fuck, kid. What are you made of? Kryptonite? Sirius POV. Falling through his front door, Sirius flicked the lights on absent-mindedly. His brain was racing, trying to process everything that Remus had said to him. That he'd said to Remus. Oh God. You wouldn't want to play with me? Could he have sounded any more like a child? Groaning, he dropped his face first onto the sofa and allowed himself 30 seconds to wallow before he forced himself back up and into the shower. While he was toweling off, it occurred to him that Remus had told him to make a list, but never said he would reciprocate. Like he was just trying to get out of it, pawn him off to someone else, so he wasn't Remus's problem anymore. Sirius, you should send me a list too. Remus, sorry? Sirius, so I know you aren't just going to fob me off on one of your friends. This is Sirius, by the way. Black. Remus, I figured as much. Okay, I'll make you a list, but I wouldn't just fob you off, Sirius. The most important part of BDSM is that you and your partners are playing safely and in a consensual manner. And if we didn't have the same tastes, then it could lead to a dangerous situation, particularly for you. Biting his lip as he laid in bed, damp hair soaking into his pillow, he tried to think through just exactly what that could mean. A dangerous situation? Sirius, how do you mean? Remus, say we decided to play together without any parameters, you as a submissive, and didn't like a scene I suggested. Can you honestly tell me that you would use a safe word or tell me to stop? That you wouldn't bottle up your distaste for an activity to try and please or impress me? It could send you into a panic attack, cause you serious mental or physical harm. That's why it's important you explore the world yourself, and by making a solid list, we can create a starting point for you. Sirius, so you really meant it when you said you'd find someone else? Remus, yes. That's not to say your list won't change. God knows mine did from when I was 18 to when I was 24, let alone from 18 to now. Sirius, yeah? Remus, well, for one, I started out as a sub. Sirius, shut up. Did you actually? I can't see that. Remus, a story for another time. Get some sleep, love. Sirius tried. He really did. But he couldn't stop thinking about that moment earlier on when Remus was pressed up against his back. Okay, so maybe he did the pressing, but it wasn't like Remus had stepped back. And the way he'd left his massive palm resting on Sirius's hip, warm and heavy as he smoothed rough circles into his hip, he'd struggled to resist giving in to his arousal. Now, in the comfort of his bedroom, he allowed himself to sink into a fantasy world where Remus gave soft-spoken instructions into his ear on something a little less savory than how to close down a till. Maybe Remus would be behind him in the shower, tell him exactly how to stroke his cock, and call him his good boy. Just the thought of those words coming from Remus's lips had him chubbing up against his thigh, and he whined softly, rolling over to rut into the soft, worn cotton of his sheets. A fistful of sheets and a wide, gasping mouth followed soon after. The knowledge that James was out, allowing him to continue uninhibited, moaning Remus's name loudly, he ground down harder, resisting the urge to reach down and tug at his sensitive dick. As he got closer and closer to the edge, his body gaining a thin sheen of sweat, he leaked more and more pre-cum into the sheets, a small wet spot helping with the slick slide of his hips. He found himself begging, as if Remus were in the room with him, begging to come, to be Remus's good boy, for Remus to please, please touch him. With a shout, Sirius came hard and messy across the bedding. Fuck. He woke up to a jumper hitting his face. Huh? He mumbled, pressing his face further into his pillow. Why are you in my bed, Siri? James questioned him, lifting the duvet and sliding in quick before he let the heat out. There was an incident, Sirius spoke quietly, refusing to open his eyes just yet. An incident? James spoke disbelievingly, poking at Sirius's sides with his chilly fingers. What sort of incident requires you to sleep in my bed? Did you spill something? When their smaller boy didn't respond and merely went pink in the cheeks, James let out a short breath of laughter. Did you spunk all over your sheets? Shut up, Sirius whined, shoving him carefully. Sides, not like you were here, is it? James tugged him in close, threading his fingers through his brother's hair and beginning the arduous task of detangling Sirius's armpit-length tresses. I was getting fucked to within an inch of my life by one Miss Lily Evans. I know, Sirius mumbled into his neck, wrinkling his nose at the lingering smell of perfume. Remus gave me a lift home and saw your car parked up next to Lily's. He was fairly certain that's what was going on. Oh, James said, slightly disappointed he hadn't been allowed to tell his best friend. Well, I had to sign this thing that basically said I wasn't going to sue her for sexual harassment or wrongful termination if shit hits the fan, but it was so worth it. Jesus, I think I believe in Jesus now. Sirius gave in to the idea of a lion, scrunching his eyes tight before opening them wide, blinking in the bright sunlight. Yes, I'm very happy that you had fun with your dream woman. Wait, you had to sign something? Yeah, James nodded excessively, way too awake for whatever the fuck time it was in the morning. We talked about it, and she said if I was interested in her dominating me for a scene, then I'd have to sign this waiver. And if we agreed it won't happen again, I'll have to sign something else? Weird, but I was obviously going to sign it. Have you seen Lily? Fuck. Absolutely incredible woman. I think she broke my brain. Maybe that's why, Sirius began, cutting himself off fast, but not fast enough that James didn't notice. Why what? He asked, pulling out of their cuddle to grasp Sirius's face in his hands. Did something happen? Are you okay? I'm fine, Jamie, Sirius sighed, resigning himself to telling James, pretending he wouldn't have already blabbed if he'd been here last night. When Remus was giving me a lift home, he told me I was welcome to use the club as a safe space to experiment, and I asked if he meant I could experiment with him, and he turned me down. Really? The other boy asked, mouth open in disbelief. He turned you down? I guess not exactly, Sirius parsed the question. I told him that I hadn't, before, and he said that if I want him to play with me, then I need to do some research and make a list of what I like so he can see if we'd be compatible or whatever. James pulled his brother back into a tight cuddle, not even protesting when Sirius grasped the sensitive skin at the base of his neck in between his teeth and began to nibble on it gently. That's a very responsible thing for him to do, Siri. James jumped when Sirius nipped a little harder in retaliation. Ah, don't get me, you little shit. I'm telling the truth. He's clearly experienced in kink and wants to make sure you have a good time. That means it's important your needs are met. Said he'd give me to someone else, Sirius mumbled with a pout on his lips. If he didn't want me. I will give you 20 quid right now if that's what he actually said, James laughed. And then I will go punch him on the nose. But I would put money on him saying that if you didn't match, he'd find you a dom he trusted to take care of you. Sirius shoved James in the ribs hard enough to make him flail on the edge of the bed. Don't take his side. Shaking his head, James stood and started to undress, throwing yesterday's clothes in the hamper. It's the right thing to do, and I know his demo may have been fairly tame, but he could be looking for a full-time master-slave dynamic or be into water sports or something. Clearly having seen the confused frown on Sirius's face, James waved him off with an, I'll let you discover that one on your own. Standing, Sirius traipsed past James's naked frame and gave him a sharp spank on his arse, seeing the red stripes already there just a second too late. When the other man fell forward into the sheets, groaning, Sirius garbled an apology and ran, distracting himself by shoving his sheets into the wash and fishing a new set out of his wardrobe to make his bed back up. His shift that night was torture, although he had managed to get a couple of hours of research in before getting ready for work. He'd wound up on various Reddit threads, some more graphic than others, and he'd had to come away from more than one because it was heading in a direction he knew would not ever spark joy in him. Remus had texted him at just as he was getting changed into his work clothes with a link to a printable sheet accompanied by a message that simply said, "Try this." It was a double-sided page with various activities and kinks on it, each with a 1 to 5 desire rating next to it, and just reading through some of the items made Sirius's belly twist with arousal. Sirius had another problem, in that Remus had been on the floor 3 times in the last 2 hours, and he couldn't stop himself from looking for the tall man. Both Caradoc and Andy were shooting him teasing grins every time they saw his searching eyes, so he was doing his best to keep his head down. That created this new problem. The customer Sirius had kindly nicknamed Sweaty Steve had a tight grasp on his wrist and whiskey on his breath, and he was not shy about telling Sirius exactly what he'd like to do to him, or, more accurately, what he'd like Sirius to do to him. Twisting his wrist, the man had only held on tighter, and Sirius tried to repress his panic as he searched the bar for anyone who might be able to help him, but most of the people inside were occupied by the rope demonstration that was taking place, and Caradoc was on his break, with Andy ferrying drinks upstairs to VIP suites. At the moment that Sweaty Steve grabbed his face in a clammy hand, forcing him further over the bar top, Remus rounded the corner, his expression instantly dropping from one of benign happiness to intense fury. As he stormed towards them, a tear escaped the corner of Sirius's eye, and he watched as Remus tore the other man off him and forced him outside. Left alone, he dropped to his knees behind the bar, breathing fast and hard as his vision blurred, a rough sob making its way up and out of his chest. It was a long time before he felt a gentle hand on the small of his back, rubbing familiar small circles into his skin. "Breathe for me, love. You can do it." Remus spoke firmly into his ear. "Nice and deep. That's it." Heart slowing, Sirius managed to draw in deeper breaths and felt the shudders racing through his body. I didn't know," he managed to speak before another sob wrenched itself out of his gut. "Shh, love." Remus smoothed the hair that had fallen out of his bun back from his face. "I've got you. You're safe." Those words unlocked something in Sirius, who merely nodded and reached for Remus. He squeaked when he felt arms wrapped securely around him and air underneath his bum, trying to look up but having his head pushed back into the juncture of Remus's neck. "It's all right, Sirius." Remus kept up a constant stream of words as he walked. "You're doing such a good job, love. Just keep breathing for me. I'm going to get us up and out of the bar, okay?" As they moved, Sirius felt his body jerk up and down, as if he was moving up. "Oh," he thought, "he's taking me upstairs." Oh, this was not good. The thought that he was being taken up to the office made his panic return. Had he fucked up by letting the guy touch him? Was he going to be fired for having a panic attack in front of customers? He hadn't noticed that he'd been set down on something soft, Remus's hand back on the base of his spine and rubbing those infuriatingly calming circles again. Keeping his head tucked into the other man's neck, he drew in deep shuddering breaths before he began to apologize. "I'm sorry, it won't happen again. I promise. I promise, Remus. He just scared me, reminded me of them." Hey, love, you're all right," Remus soothed him, holding him tighter as he shook. You're not in trouble, Sirius. We just needed to get you out of the bar. You're all right. Keep breathing for me. It could have been minutes later. It could have been an hour. But when Sirius pulled back, breathing steady and heart rate slowed back to normal, Remus cupped his face in his big hands and watched him carefully. How are you feeling? He asked gently. A bit tired and gross, really, Sirius whispered. He wasn't nice. No, I don't think he was. Remus hummed thoughtfully. Would you like to have a shower, love? Don't worry about your shift. Caradoc and Andy have it covered downstairs. Finally, Sirius took notice of where he was. The dark green walls, rotten furniture, and the soft, comfortable bed they were perched on the edge of. Towing at the pale gray rug, Sirius stared through the glass doors in front of him into the bathroom. Would you mind if I did have a shower? This is your room, right? Remus nodded, standing from the bed and running a hand through his wild hair. Come on, then. I'll show you how the shower works and find you some trackies you can throw on. Does that sound good? Mm-hmm, Sirius hummed, following Remus into the green-tiled bathroom, unable to stop an awe-filled expression taking over his face. This is just for you? Yes, Remus huffed a laugh out of his nose. You like it? I designed it myself when we were doing the remodel. Bet you can't guess my favorite color. He joked, letting Sirius take in the space. It was impressive, tiled all over in bottle green subway tiles and finished with brushed stainless steel taps and showers. Do you ever use both showers at the same time? Quirking an eyebrow, Remus fixed him with a stare, as if waiting for him to catch on to a joke. Slowly, it came to Sirius. Oh, right. The bath, though, Remus continued, pointing out the ginormous charcoal tub to their right. That's all for me. I know it looks insane, but it fits me from my head to my toes. Is it stone? Sirius asked, taking in the texture of the bath. Something like that. Right. Come here. Remus held a hand out for him, tugging him close enough that he could see which lever to twist, but still be away from the spray. So it's this one for water and this one on the left for temperature, okay? I have it set pretty hot, so watch for that. Towels on the rail. Give me a shout if you need anything. I mean it. I'll be just outside. Remus was being gentle with him, the kind of gentle he'd seen him be immediately after he'd spanked his puppet. Thank you. Before Remus had turned to leave, he'd already tugged his shirt over his head, shaking his hair out of its scrunchie before turning the shower on. As he watched Remus's retreat, he popped the button on his jeans, kicking his boots off to get them over his feet and towing off his socks. Right as he stepped under the spray and Remus disappeared from view, his breathing started to ratchet up, his eyes clenched shut under the warm spray. In an effort to smother the feeling of hands on him, he turned the heat right up, gasping and jerking out of the way when the hot water scalded his skin. Remus? Yes, love? Came the answer from the bedroom, Remus poking his head around the corner with a pair of tracksuit bottoms in his hands. Are you all right? Sirius was sure he made a sight, curled against the tiles as he shivered at the difference in temperature. Remus dropped the trousers and swiftly made his way over to the shower, running a hand underneath to test the temperature before wincing and turning it down. He held out his hand to Sirius, who just stared at it for a second, confused. Do you need some help? I keep feeling his hands on me, Sirius whimpered, and Remus stepped through the stream of water, uncaring about his clothes getting wet. When Sirius didn't flinch away, he offered his hand again. Do you want me to help you? Would you? Sirius asked, looking up at the other man with wide, wet eyes, lurching forward when Remus opened his arms. Do you want me to call James for you when we get out? Remus asked carefully, reaching for the shower gel on the shelf next to him, working it into a flannel and releasing Sirius so he could see what he was doing. He's gone down to see his mom and dad, Sirius whispered, letting Remus rub the suds into his skin, watching with wide eyes as he took care around the tender hand-shaped mark on his wrist. He'll just panic if he hears about it now. Okay, that's all right, Remus reassured him, slowly working the flannel over his skin until he had to crouch. As he washed over his ankles, moving up his calves, it occurred to Sirius that in any other situation, having Remus on his knees in front of him while he was naked would have driven him wild with arousal. Tonight, his cock didn't even twitch. Remus didn't pretend it wasn't there, but he skirted carefully around his groin, instructing Sirius to spin and face the wall before continuing on getting him clean. When he rose from his crouch, he tugged Sirius back into his frame, reminiscent of the night before, and Sirius broke once more, a shuddering sob making its way through his frame. "You're all right, love. I've got you," Remus hummed, slowly rocking them from side to side under the warm spray of the shower. "Shall we do your hair?" Nodding, Sirius straightened up and let Remus rub the suds into his scalp, following up with conditioner soon after. When he was instructed to shut his eyes and flinched, Remus took both of his hands and placed them on his own hips, squeezing them gently. "We're gonna do your face, love," he reassured Sirius while he spread the cleanser between his palms and rubbed it over his face. "I'm right here, and I'll keep talking. You're safe. It's all right." Before he could reopen his eyes, Sirius sighed in relief and barreled forward into Remus, holding onto him tightly. "Shall we get out?" Remus asked him, reciprocating the hug tightly. He felt a bit broken, dripping onto a bath mat and standing still as someone else dried him off, barely reacting to the gentle treatment. "Is this aftercare?" he asked quietly. It had occurred to him that Remus was very well practiced at taking care of him. "Yes and no," Remus answered. "You heard me saying the other night that aftercare can be different for everyone?" "You did, and you let Poppet do whatever she wanted because she was experienced." He said the word like it was poison. "I let Eve direct her own aftercare," Remus agreed, lip quirking at Sirius's distaste for his former partner. "Because she was experienced enough to know what she'd need, and the scene was not particularly heavy, yes." He paused, encouraging Sirius to step 1 foot at a time into the bottoms he'd laid out. "If it was a heavier scene, or she was a newcomer to BDSM, I would have directed it. Similarly with trauma, it's important to give victims opportunities to make their own decisions, but sometimes people respond better to firm guidance. A little bit of a different premise, but the same purpose. Calming someone down in a safe and secure environment." "Thank you for caring for me," Sirius said quietly. "Not really what I imagined when I thought about being in your room for the first time." Remus let out a little laugh as he stood, wrapping an arm around Sirius and encouraging him back into the main room. "Me either, love." "So you've imagined it?" Sirius asked hopefully, craning his head back to look at the dom. "Cheeky," Remus chastised him. "Up in the bed now." Sirius pouted, but was excited to be allowed back onto Remus's bed. "Will you do my hair?" Remus smiled properly now, picking up the microfiber towel and brush he'd left there and settling on the edge of the bed. "Come here then," Remus directed him, gesturing to the space on the floor between his knees. It had been a relaxing 10 minutes, Remus steadily brushing out the knots from his roots down to the scraggly ends of his hair, then meticulously braiding it backwards into a French plait. When the end of the plait was gently tugged, Sirius tipped his head back until it was resting on Remus's thigh. "Can I ask you about what you said earlier?" Remus asked carefully, setting the hairbrush down on the bedside table. "What about?" "You said that he reminded you of them," Remus inquired. "You don't have any scars like I do, though." Letting a bitter laugh free, Sirius let his head drop forward again. "They were too smart for that. My birth parents, they used to beat me. Family traditions and all that." "Oh, love, I'm so sorry," Remus breathed, pressing a kiss into his hair. "Not your fault," Sirius shrugged. "When I was 16, they dislocated my shoulder and broke my humerus because I refused to marry my cousin. Not so funny, huh?" He tagged on the pun at Remus's sharp inhale, twisting to see his expression. "But you got away?" I managed to run away to James's, 'cause even though we met at boarding school, I'd been to his house a couple of times and knew their address. After I'd been sent to A&E, a nurse took pity on me and dropped me off there. And here we are now. He did a bad imitation of jazz hands. I'm so glad you did, Remus confessed, sighing deeply. Me too, Sirius whispered, the silence between them growing stagnant. Do you want to stay here tonight, or for me to take you home? He asked gently. I don't want to be alone, Sirius whispered carefully. Would you stay here with me? Remus looked like he was considering it for a moment before he agreed. No funny business, though. I promise, Sirius smiled. I'll be good. He tried to ignore the little ripple his own words sent through him, hoping it wasn't noticeable to Remus, who sent him a secret little smile as he helped him stand and get back onto the bed. Except there was a little wet patch now from where Remus had been perched. I'm just going to get changed out of these clothes, okay? Sirius nodded, curling up like a cat under the covers and watching through half-lidded eyes as Remus stripped down and threw his wet clothes onto the bathroom floor with a wet thwop. Does no funny business mean I'm not allowed to look? Turning from where he was searching through one of 3 wardrobes, Remus smirked over his shoulder at him. I think that would be a little unfair considering I hopped in the shower with you, wouldn't it? Sirius hummed, eyes skating over Remus's body. The silver slashes of scars that split the tanned skin up, the generous curve of his arse, and his thick thighs. When he turned, Sirius's gaze transferred from firm muscle to gorgeous cock. Even soft, Remus's shaft was thick and nestled in a neat thatch of hair that continued all the way up his chest, spreading out into a smattering of dark brown curls. Sirius's mouth was watering. Do you like what you see, love? Remus asked teasingly, laughing a little at the pout that adorned Sirius's face when he tugged a pair of boxer briefs up over his hips. Humming, Sirius sat up as Remus turned off the big light and got closer to the bed. Do you shave it to look like that? My chest hair? He asked gently. I don't know. It just grew in that way. Oh, Sirius sighed. It looks really soft. Come on then. Remus climbed into the bed, holding his arm up for Sirius to cuddle into him, letting him rub his cheek into his chest hair until he could feel the other boy's smile against his skin. Verdict? Soft and comfy, Sirius mumbled. Will I get a nickname? Oh, you'll have to wait and see, Remus teased, smoothing a hand over Sirius's head and pulling him in tighter. When a mouth attached to his chest, just above his nipple, Remus jerked in surprise. I thought you were going to be good? Oh, Sirius released the skin. Sorry, it's a comfort response, I think. Jamie is always covered in hickeys from our cuddles. In that case, Remus hummed, tucking Sirius's head back into his skin, watching as the boy hesitantly latched onto him again. You can carry on. Get some sleep, and I'll be here if you need me. Letting his body relax completely, Sirius drifted off to sleep in the arms of the man he'd dreamt of the night before.